Welcome to Soul Seeker. I'm Sam Kabert, and I'll be your guide on this journey. I started the show back in 2019, chasing answers like many of us do. But what I've come to understand is this: it's not the seeking that fulfills us. It's what we find in the quiet stillness beneath the search. When we stop chasing and learn to be with what is, we access a deeper wisdom. One that leads not to more doing, but to ease, grace, joy, and true fulfillment. My mission with this podcast is to help high performers just like yourself to regulate your nervous system, reprogram subconscious patterns, and embody emotional freedom so you can lead with clarity, resilience, and alignment. Welcome to Soul Seeker. Let's grow. What is up, fam? Welcome back to another episode of the Soul Seeker Podcast. I am your host, as always, Sam Kabert, and it's always such a pleasure to connect with you guys and introduce you to sometimes influencers, other times friends, and other times just interesting people that I want to connect with, right? We have all of the above. In this episode, I'm interviewing my friend, Alexus Rae. She's absolutely incredible. We connected in the fall of 2024 through NLP Master Practitioner training. I mean, that was like a boot camp. In that training, we became master practitioners of NLP, that's neuro-linguistic programming, MER, mental emotional release, and hypnotherapy. I mean, this was 2 weeks long, every single day with 1 day off from about 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. It was so much fun. And we went deep too. So Alexus and I got to know each other. It's really cool to see what she's up to and just how much she's grown over the past almost year since knowing her. So she's currently writing her book. And in this episode, we talk a little bit about her book, but we're really talking about what you can expect in terms of growth and meeting that next evolution of yourself. So you're really going to enjoy this episode. Sit back, relax, enjoy, and check out the show notes and go deeper with Alexus for sure. And as always, if you haven't left the pod a rating and review, please take a couple of minutes to do so. It just helps the show grow. And if you want to go deeper with me, check out the show notes and join our free breath club. Other than that, enjoy this episode with Alexus Rae. What up? What up? Here we are again for another episode of the Soul Seeker Podcast. I am your host, Sam Kabert, and in this episode, we're going to be talking with my good friend, Alexus Rae. And Alexus, before we get started with the pod, as you know, we are going to do 3 simple breaths. So for all of you out there in listening land, you can always breathe with us, just being mindful of your surroundings. Obviously, don't close your eyes if you're doing something where you can't. But if you can, I would really invite you to slow down and take these breaths with us. So Alexus, for you, for me, and for all of you listening that can close down your eyes, I invite you to do so. And just feeling your feet on the floor, sitting straight up, and through your nose, inhaling all the way up. Sipping in a bit more air at the top. And a big sigh, let it go, let it go. And again, as your belly expands and your back body expands through your nose, inhaling all the way up. Sipping in a bit more air at the top. And a big sigh, let it go. And one last one, inhaling slowly all the way up. Sipping in a bit more air at the top. And exhale. Just letting the breath return to its natural state and rhythm and flickering the eyes back open. Alexus, what is up? Stoked to have you here. Welcome to the Soul Seeker Podcast. How are you feeling?
Thanks, Sam. I'm feeling very excited to be here. I knew that we were going to be starting with breath, so I was like looking forward to that. And I can't wait to see where this conversation takes us today.
Same here. So let's jump straight into it. You're in the thick of writing your book. I'm so stoked to hear about this. Your book's Evolving You. That's the name, right?
Yes, that's the name. I'm still working on, the subtitle, but that's the premise. Personal evolution.
I think that's good. Like obviously I've written a lot of books and usually I'll have an idea of like what the subtitle is or the title is, but not being married to it. And just because we are diving straight into this, like this is your first book. That's right. Right. Which I
Yeah,
mean,
this
that
was
in itself is amazing.
thanks. First book from start to finish. Truly, I attempted to start writing this book in 2022,
Mhm.
and then life wasn't ready for it yet. I wasn't
Mm.
ready for it based on everything that happened. And now here we are basically 3 years later, and it's the journey of the last 7 years of growth in my life, everything I've learned in between there, um, to help people get to where I am today faster.
I think that's a really good point when you're saying like it wasn't ready yet. And I'll just share real quick like the first three books that I wrote, I was very much in the thick of my masculine doing energy. And I wrote all three in less than a year. And then after
Mm.
that, that's when I had my rock bottom and, spiritual awakening, all that. And I had the message of this next book being soul life balance. And then within a few months, the lockdowns. So I'm looking around and I'm like, all right, time to write my next book. And it wasn't until like a very close friend of mine reflected back to me and was like, hey, Sam, maybe it's time for you to slow down a bit. And I realized that I needed to really learn the lessons of the book in order to write the book. And it took me about 3 years until I started writing it. So that's probably similar to what you're experiencing, right? Or what you were.
100%. So when I first started writing the book, it was about 2 years after my version of the rock bottom that you just mentioned.
Mhm.
And at the time, I thought I was ready. I was like, okay, I've come through this. I'm starting my coaching practice. Life is flying high. I'm in my brand new state. It's amazing, like physical state of Arizona. And then I just got knocked back. Like,
Mhm.
chronic migraine took over my life again not again, for the first time. It took over my life in September of 2022. Changes in career continued to happen. And so I knew that this book was on my heart, but like everything else was still not established. And what you just said is so true. And I know you're a speaker as well. I had one mentor tell me once that we can't share what's still baking. Like
Mm.
we're still baking. The lessons are still baking. We're still becoming everything that we're ready and want to teach, but we can't quite start sharing that yet until we're fully baked. And it took me a little while to be patient with that. I was like, okay, clearly this book thing isn't working. I had two different ideas. I had different philosophies, even from what I'm working with today.
Mm.
And it did take the journey of becoming more of what I was teaching to now fully be able to communicate it and share.
Yeah, embodiment is what we're talking about, right?
Totally.
Yeah, that's been a big theme for me this year, really focusing on embodiment. And, we'll get into the NLP stuff since we're both like, that's how we met through NLP and the values and things like that. And values have always been a big part of my life, maybe not in the way NLP teaches it, but I think it's as simple as just looking at like, what do we value? And if we're not embodying those things, then things aren't falling into place. But then when we start to embody the things that we value most, it's like everything just falls into place. It just clicks.
Mm-hmm. And I love how you say value, because having values is something that I didn't feel like I started discovering until I was in NLP training. Like, I knew I always had values, and depending on whoever's listening's exploration of human potential, we all know that we're being guided by some internal, like, kind of right or wrong, some just, some like, oh, maybe this, maybe not, maybe that. But until we get clear on what those are, we can just be making decisions willy nilly.
Mhm.
And in my case, I was making decisions that were based on values that were based on my negative emotions, my limiting beliefs, the values that I had no value, the value that I wasn't deserving or worthy. And those choices aligned with those values that I had. And so going to NLP training, discovering that values are our deepest level programming, uncovering how to get familiar with what I was thinking my values were and how to change them was such a transformational framework. But the difference in my experience is that most of my growth journey, Sam, it was like I was stumbling through the dark on my own, and then I found the modality. Then I found the book. Then I found the teacher that validated the experience that I just went through. So by the time you and I were both at Master Practitioner training when we first met, I had uncovered my new values. I was working on embodying them, but I couldn't like feel them. They didn't feel real. I was telling myself I was worthy, but I still didn't feel that. And until MER and NLP on a whole different level, my embodiment was as real as it could be when we're managing baggage.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is a interesting discussion about values. So we'll keep this pulling at this thread for a moment, and then we'll get into your story a little bit more. But it's funny because in NLP and the breakthrough sessions that we do and your breakthrough you sessions, like a lot of times we'll go through, not a lot of times, this is how we do it as practitioners. We go through a list of values, which when we talk about values, we're talking about things like integrity, conviction, and and joy, whatever it might be, right? Just a few things that pop up. But for me, like one of them is like pushing myself, right? And how do I do that? I value ocean plunges, my beach time, my breath work. And when I'm doing those things, which they aren't necessarily like the word of like accountability or integrity or pushing myself, right? It's the actual thing. And the way I think of it a little bit more is the yogic philosophy of sadhana, which basically is in pursuit of, it's your spiritual practice on a daily basis. So what are my spiritual and mindful practices on a daily basis? Those are the things I value. That's kind of the way I think about it outside of NLP. Yeah.
Totally. I just have to say, Sam, I mean, you and I have been getting to know each other since November, and I've listened to some of your podcast episodes. You and I have had several conversations. I'm just so impressed by how much studying you've done. Like your recollection of different philosophies is really invaluable. And I appreciate how well you merge all of them together and allow each of them to have like truth and space, because even in values, even in our pursuit of finding what is our most empowered and authentic version of ourselves, there's more than one way to get there. And I feel like you embody that so well that there's different paths.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. We're talking about, and I can remember as far back as like high school, integrity has been my number one value, right? So it makes sense that I love embodiment so much, right? Thank you for the kind words. And I am going to receive that because it's important to receive. I'm not going to deflect. However, I am going to segue this into your story and making this a little bit more hearing about you. And I'd love to hear just from you, like, what did your dark night of the soul, what did your awakening process, your rock bottom look like?
Whew. Okay. Well, I just wrote that. I don't know. I'm like, okay, we're going there. I'm glad that we're going there. I just wrote chapter 2 2 days ago, which is where my dark night of the soul transformation starts. But it started, Sam, in micro steps. It was like I had, to paint a picture for you, a very black, iced, frozen heart that I had been numbing and protecting, and it was half mechanical and it was half functional. And my dark night looked like a few little ice picks that like chiseled just enough on my ice cold heart, like just one little chisel there. It was a conversation with my now ex. He was like, what do you not want to feel? Whoa. Okay. That was on our first date. Then there was this moment. I know.
Yeah.
Then there was this moment that I was having, like I was trying to get back into working out. I call it my lackluster relationship with exercise at that point in time in my life, that on again, off again kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I was planking in my living room, trying not to hold my breath, trying not to pee my pants all at the same time. And I heard my mind say, just go somewhere else. And I wasn't unfamiliar with hearing myself say that because I was a competitive athlete. I had played college basketball. I had learned how to train my body past the point that my mind wanted to break. But what was different about that plank moment is for some reason it like transcended that plank, and I realized that it was in everything. Like it was in every aspect of how I was living my life. And so those were two major ice pick moments that like just put enough of a fracture in my ice cold heart that by the time my actual breakdown happened in August of 2020, which I could tell you all about it, Sam, but I kind of just want to send you the chapter of my book so you could read it. I shattered. Like I shattered entirely and was laying face down on the carpet in my bedroom, ready to completely give up on life. Right. And I had my mom on the phone, and the same perfectionism that had driven me to the point where I was so miserable and disgusted in my life was the same perfectionism that kept me here. And my mom holding the torch, like, this is temporary, this is going to pass, like in those moments when I couldn't hold it for myself. And a few weeks later, I got back into therapy. And here we are now 5 years later writing a book about all of it.
I appreciate you sharing that. And what kind of therapy did you get into? Was it traditional talk therapy or something else?
Great question. So cognitive behavioral therapy, I've been very lucky that that's been the only therapy I've really been in. However, I was a slow stepper. So when I first started going to therapy, which my mom saved my life then too, when I was 18, she was like, you are going. I found your therapist and here's your appointment date. Okay, that was great. Well, therapy only works if you're honest with yourself. And it took me 10 years of going to therapy before I was ready to be honest about why I was really there. And after that breakdown, after being shattered completely into 1,000 billion pieces in August of 2020, I realized that if I kept living my life the way that I wasn't going to survive. And so I had no other choice than to walk into my therapist's office again. At that point, it was Zoom, and be honest about why I was actually there.
Yeah. You know, one of the hardest things when we're in the thick of it is being able to receive those motivational mindset shifts. Like today, I do, as you know, and a lot of listeners know, I do Tuesday through Thursday breathwork sessions for Breath School and Breath Club. And that's something we talked about today. You know, there are a couple people really in the thick of it and just not seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. And two of my favorite mindset shifts are that breakdowns are breakthroughs and setbacks are setups. And it can be really challenging for someone that's in the thick of it, whether or not they've been doing the work or not, to hear and to receive that. What kind of advice would you either give to your previous self or someone out there listening that's struggling to see the positive while they're still in the thick of the darkness?
Yeah. So important. And first, I think this is for both myself and anyone in that situation right now, is just being able to acknowledge where you're at. I think there's real power in saying out loud, like, I do not see the light at the end of this tunnel. And when we say that out loud and we share it, we're not holding it in, we're not storing it, we're allowing it to move through, as opposed to continuing to perpetuate that spiral in our minds, our own internal systems. So speak it out, journal it out, be honest about where you are. That's like my first thing. And two things came to mind, Sam, as you were saying. You guys talked about this today. My first is that when you can't look forward, do yourself a favor and just look back. Like, just remember how far you've come, like where you were a year ago compared to this dark moment that you're in right now, or where you were 6 weeks ago, a month ago. Like, it doesn't have to be far, or it can be far, but just look back at how far you've come and acknowledge that distance. Because when we celebrate those wins, we build that momentum, that confidence. We remind ourselves that we can keep going forward.
100%. That was one of
The second thing.
Oh, sorry, it cut out there. Yeah. Tell us the second thing.
Oh,
yeah, you're good. We're good.
Okay. The second thing, real quick, is just, now we're delaying, but that's okay.
Yeah.
The second thing is that you write it out, you speak it out. So I guess this is the third. Okay, let me just recap. First, write it out, speak it out, acknowledge where you are. Second, take a look back at how far you've come. Acknowledge your progress, celebrate your wins, give yourself credit for everything that you're handling right now and how well you're doing it differently compared to how you would have done it in the past. And then third, ask for help. Talk to someone, talk to your family. Like, I have been extremely fortunate, and I know that this is part of the privilege of my life, to be very close to both of my parents. And each one of them, when I need it the most, can tell me what I need to hear, not what I want to hear. And having people around you like that in those moments when we're in our own spirals that can hold up the mirror and kind of help snap you out of it. Maybe it doesn't always feel good, but we need it. Helps.
Yeah, and I like that you mentioned hold up the mirror, mirror work, not looking into a mirror, but seeing others as a reflection of yourself to find your blind spots is so impactful. And what you were mentioning before about like other times in your life, yeah, that was something that I mentioned earlier too. Like, find those other times in your life when you've hit that rock bottom. And now upon reflection, you can see those breadcrumb trails that how it actually set you up for something that is better than you would have ever imagined in a lot of ways. But we, to your point, need to surrender first. We need to get to that state of acceptance. And speaking of acceptance, I'd love to hear from you a little bit more in terms of your journey when you hit that most recent rock bottom. Like, what did it look like specifically for you in terms of being like a high achiever and being in your doing and things like that? Hey, it's Sam. Can I share something real quick that I think might actually help you? If you've ever felt overwhelmed by your emotions, like you're doing all the right things, yet you still feel off, it's not because you're broken. Most of us were never taught how to feel in a way that actually helps us heal. That's why I created Breath Club, a free community where I guide weekly breathwork sessions to help you regulate your nervous system, process emotions, and return to clarity. We use something called the 90-second reset, a simple, science-backed practice that shows how fast emotions shift when you allow yourself to feel them fully. You'll get access to live calls, a community, and on-demand breathwork exercises to reset anytime. No pressure, just an invitation to feel safe in your body again. Links in the show notes if you want to join us.
Whew. Oh, that's a loaded question, Sam. Okay. So 2020 was like emotional rock bottom. Okay. Mm-hmm. Then in 2021, I still wasn't getting the signals. I wasn't listening to the information that the universe was trying to send my way fast enough. And so basically everything in my life kept escalating. Like 2020 was kind of just the beginning, and it took me a while to really get the message. That being said, I would say, to answer this question specifically, the rock bottom that it made me think of was in 2022 when chronic migraine took over my life, had me debilitated for 3 months. Then it was a whole 18-month journey back to like have a quality of life. Now I forgot the question. Hold on.
Not people pleasing, but the doing, the achieving part of you.
Thank you. Yes. Okay. So between 2020 and 2022, I was doing. I was like, I'm going to get into therapy. I'm going to yoga. I'm feeding my body. I'm taking care of myself. I am doing the doing. But then it still wasn't working, and I was doing the doing, and all of a sudden, chronic migraine took over, and I could not understand. I was like, I am taking care of myself. I am in the best shape of my life. Like, this does not compute by everything that I've been understanding. If I'm doing the things, why is this problem still here? And what I came to realize was that my lesson that I hadn't gotten in those 2 years of dealing with health issues and a bunch of other life revelations was that I actually needed to do less. My work was not in doing more. It was just in being who I already knew I was meant to be. And in being that version of myself, I could just relax. So I actually had to learn in my recovery of chronic migraine and learning how to manage these debilitating symptoms that the only expectations we actually have in life are the ones that we put on ourselves, especially as adults. And I was 28 years old, still expecting that the world was expecting something of me as my body was sitting there breaking down and I could barely even open the blinds in my bedroom because the natural light was just too bright. And I was holding myself to an expectation of healing, of performance, of I'm not doing enough. It's not going to be okay if I don't get into motion. And my body was literally like, girl, sit here and be still. Like, the expectations you're putting on yourself are not real. They're the ones you're putting on yourself. So just change that. That was a big thing as a high achiever, a high performer, to suddenly realize that like I was actually in control of the expectations I was setting.
Yeah. And this was in the lockdown years of 2020 to 2022, correct?
Yeah. So 2020 was like that. It was the lockdown led to the breakdown.
Yeah.
Probably for many of us.
For sure. And it was so eye-opening back then because I had done ayahuasca for the first time and had my big spiritual awakening in early 2019. And I made some massive shifts in my life in 2019. So by the time the lockdowns came, I was good. I was all set up. And even now, I mean, not that I hate to say it, and I don't even like using the word hate, I'd say strongly dislike, but 2020 and 2021, and even some ways 2022, but especially 2020 and 2021, those were the best years of my life. With all the respect and devastation to everything that went down, personally, those were the two best years of my life. And the growth I had and the expansion and the community and people I was around, it was like, there's two different things going on. There were the people that were seeing as an opportunity to grow and the people that were stuck in fear. And now with the political landscape and everything else that's been going on the past couple of years and everything since the pandemic, we're seeing this new wave of awakening where like now the people that were starting to like get a little bit curious versus like the people that like you and I that were going really deep back then, like they're like, okay, I was a little bit primed before. And now like they're starting to go really deep. Like, what are your thoughts on this whole thing?
So what I've been learning, my thoughts are it's beautiful. Okay, my thoughts are it's beautiful. What I've been learning is that we're kind of at a turn of an age, and there's many more smart people that have purposely studied this. So I'm just going to bring the scratch of the surface knowledge that I have here. And if this like piques your interest, please go do your own research. But essentially, people have studied that there's like turns in civilizations. And sometimes they call them like 4-quarter turns or something like that. Right now, where we are in the time of human history, we are bridging that turn of civilization. And at the same time that that's happening, we're also experiencing a shift in the spiritual realm about like all of the people being born into the world now are of a different level of consciousness than what you and I were born with our generation. So it's almost like every generation has kind of their own soul assignment of consciousness when we come into this world. And so all of these different shifts on all of these different planes are happening at the same time. And in the highest, most chunked up version of this, my understanding, Sam, is that across the globe, we're working on raising consciousness. We're working on breaking the generational systems and traumas and events that like got us here. And the more of us on earth that are actively doing this conscious work to design our life and to feel good in the choices that we make and to do it authentically with this purpose that's calling to us, it's serving the greatest good.
100%. And, you know, I agree with that totally. And there's so much out there. And I also resonate with what you said. There's so many more like people that can speak to it better. And it makes me reflect back on what you said earlier about how I have such good recall, to paraphrase what you said. And when you said that, I was thinking, oh, okay, I don't feel that way, because a lot of things recently, because I've gone so deep in like science and more nervous system and subconscious reprogramming, breath work, like I could have talked your ear off what you're just talking about a few years ago, like 3-4 years ago, and said all the terms around it. And now I'm like trying to access those files, and I'm like, well, epochs and the golden age, and then the indigo children, star seeds, and all this. Okay, I got some stuff coming through, but more technical terms. What's really come through though is the Hopi prophecy. You familiar with that?
Fill me in.
Oh, you're gonna love this being in Arizona. I forget, I think it's somewhere in Arizona, but Greg Braden. I love Greg Braden. He's got a show on Gaia called Missing Links. And when I watched it in 2019, it exploded my whole entire mind. One piece of what he spoke about was on Plymouth Rock, which I believe is somewhere in Arizona, but it could be New Mexico. I'm not sure. And there's this prophecy in a hieroglyph where humanity's going on two paths. And there's one path where they're disconnected from their body. Their head is literally severed from the body. And there's like them in canes and hunched over. Then there's another one where the earth is beautiful. It just shows like corn, and it's supposed to represent like everything, the awakening period, essentially. And that's largely what we're talking about here. Which path and timeline are we going to go into? And I'm thinking of the movie Barbie, because I did like a 30-minute breakdown of the spirituality hidden in Barbie, which got denied 20 times by YouTube, but that's another story. And in the movie Barbie, it's basically the Hopi prophecy being played out, because the main character, whatever her name is, generic Barbie, you know, the main Barbie, Margot Robbie's character, she's having these ascension symptoms that you were alluding to earlier. And she's initially like kind of rejecting it just for a quick minute, but then she accepts it. She steps into this beautiful world of awakening. Ken's rejecting it, and he's on the other path of the Hopi prophecy to the very end, which I think is just like absolutely beautiful story that most people have no idea what's going on there, you know?
Totally. I love how once you start this journey, music, movies, books, the meaning behind everything becomes so much deeper. And also it's like, oh my gosh, that was always there. I just wasn't seeing it. You know, it wasn't in my 126 of possibilities. There was one night, Sam, in 2022, I was like experiencing my first maybe real like expansive spiritual awakening. I stayed up watching Moana, taking notes in my journal about like this journey of listening to your voice and like all of these things that were coming through. And it's just like you mentioning whatever movie you just mentioned made me think of that, because it's like it comes totally in the way that you're ready to see it then. Every time you pick up a book and you read it a second time, you're a different person. So you're going to see something different. When you start to expand your awareness, another movie that totally blew my mind, you were talking about how this Hopi prophecy like expanded your thing, was Everything Everywhere All at Once.
Yeah, totally.
That movie, like I was probably late to the game. I still feel late to the game of spirituality, but like coming across that movie changed my entire paradigm. It shifted everything. And so if there's ever something that you're like someone tells you, oh, you should read this book, you read it and it doesn't really hit or something, then years later, like, oh, maybe I should pick that up again. Just pick it up because there's something in there that's different.
Yeah, an amazing documentary. You'll love this one if you haven't seen it. It's called Glitch in the Matrix. It's a documentary, might be on Netflix. I don't know. Glitch in the Matrix. Everyone listening, write that down. Go watch it. It's going to talk about like all the things of shifting timelines and how it works. Everything behind everything everywhere all at once. And there's a movie from, I don't know, I want to say 1997, but it's probably more like 2007 or something like that. It's probably like 2012. I don't know. I clearly don't have the recall there. But the movie is called Coherence. That's another one to write down. It's about I think a meteor or comet that comes, and then they're having a, what's it called when you do like a dinner with your friend, a dinner party, and they keep jumping in and out of timelines. And it's more of a thriller, whereas like Everything Everywhere All at Once, like at first I didn't like it. I loved it because it was like, wow, this movie is out there in the collective. It's winning an Oscar. That's great for the collective consciousness. But this is just silly, you know? And then I realized, oh, this is great that it's silly, right? So it's fascinating.
Yes. Fascinating.
Very cool. Very cool. Let's talk about ascension symptoms for a moment here. Because you ever follow Elizabeth April?
No.
Are you into aliens or channeling or anything like that?
I'm into channeling. I don't know how I feel about aliens, and I guess channeling could have many definitions. So, I mean, fill me in on where we're going here.
All right, so we'll see where we're going to go with aliens, and if I'm going to try to convince you and the listeners that about aliens. You know, the content of this podcast shifted when I got into public speaking in 2022. It's been much more toned down, but the first 3 years from 2019 to 2022, almost every episode was like psychedelic therapy, plant and earth medicine, and aliens and everything that we were talking about, like that I don't remember, right? Now it's more the grounded stuff. Anyways, Elizabeth April is a YouTuber and she channels what's known as the Galactic Federation. It's like all these different alien races. And she opened my mind up to so many things back in the day, and one of which was ascension symptoms. And whether it's like the migraines that you were talking about earlier, or maybe knowing exactly where you place something and then it's not there, and then it reappears months later, like weird things like that as you're jumping in and out of timelines. Like, is that kind of what it felt like for you in 2020 to 22 ascension symptoms?
Yeah, but they were all coming through my health. And I don't know that I would, like at the time, I wouldn't call them ascension symptoms because it just literally felt like chaos and felt like everything was not working all at once.
Yeah.
But looking back, I could see, like now being on the other side of it, again, when you're in the dark, you go into this tunnel, you're on the trail of trying to become this version, this next highest self, whatever you want to create in the physical. You can't, like, you kind of forget sometimes, or you can't see where you're going anymore, and you're just like putting one foot in front of the other. So it was, I would say, I mean, looking back now, Sam, I think what I was experiencing was just massive universal redirection. And in that redirection, because I was so far off path, it was ascension because I was like way, lower than the low as far as my consciousness goes. So it was ascension, but it really felt more just like it was trying to get me on track.
100.
And then since then, the other symptoms, I do feel like chronic migraine was probably closer to ascension, whereas like the car accident was just massive redirection. And between migraine now and where I'm at, I would say in the last 2 years between 2023 and now has been where I've started to notice some of more of those synchronicities, but it's because I'm already on the path. So I don't feel like I'm having as many ascension symptoms. I feel like I'm having more go this way direction.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, it's all terminology and how we want to look at it, right? If someone listening's, not into woo, spiritual, esoteric, it's going to align more of like a grounded outlook. If someone's more into the woo, then you're going to be like, oh, it's an ascension symptom. But we're all like saying the same thing here, right? Because it is getting us back on track. Like even that car accident, how many times does someone need to get a flat tire and then have something else deflated and then this deflated in a matter of 3 weeks to understand like, hey, there's a message being communicated to you here. And we can look at it that way and also be like, oh, it would be a part of ascension because it's to raise our vibration, our energy as we are ascending upward. So all of it kind of speaking the same thing. But I've found recently that a lot of people are really resonating with that and need to hear the message that, hey, this is happening for you. And that's why those things are happening with you, Pause. You're holding your breath again, aren't you? Most high performers don't need more doing. They need a nervous system reset. I'm Sam Kaber, and I'm a keynote speaker and nervous system coach, helping people just like yourself to reset from burnout and return to clarity. I've worked with organizations and audiences ready to move beyond burnout and into embodying clarity. My keynotes blend storytelling, subconscious reprogramming, and live breathwork experiences that get people out of their heads and back into their lives. If you're planning a conference, retreat, or leadership event and want something that doesn't just inspire, but actually transforms, head to the link in the show notes. Let's make your next event unforgettable.
And I listened to your podcast where you mentioned that you heard someone speak about how life is happening with us. Mm-hmm. And that's the biggest thing, right? Whether you're feeling like you're ascending or whether you feel like it's pure chaos, the question isn't like, what do I need to control more in order to avoid this? The question is like, what is this trying to show me? And if you don't get the messages will continue to escalate, like truly. So I don't mean to keep talking about it, but I have to. 2020, I had 2 kidney infections. I was hospitalized with both of them. The beginning of 2021, I had COVID. I had long COVID, which I'm still personally reprogramming out of my system. Then I had the car accident. Then a year and 2 months later, I had the migraine. So it was like, I was not getting the message. Yeah. And if things keep getting worse, then it's the ultimate opportunity to sit in the power of the pause and really reflect on where in your life these messages are calling for your attention.
Yeah, absolutely. In the power of the pause, finding that stillness, realizing that it's not about doing more. It's about getting everything in the internal world back in order. I love it. I love it. I know we're both like really big into emotional health, but I'd love to hear from you because for years, I would consider myself a mental health advocate, but I don't think it really clicked for me till like 2, maybe 3 years ago that we're all missing the boat on mental health. It's a mental and emotional health, and arguably emotional health is even more important than mental health. So I'd love to hear what your thoughts are.
My thoughts are that we are one being with many aspects, and each one of these aspects has to be harmonized in order for things to be okay. And in my book, I explain this as our 4 focuses. And Sam, this will be familiar for you. So we have our physical body. I've already talked a lot about those challenges that I've came through. Then the mental and emotional focuses of how do we feel when something happens. And like you said, those are stored in our unconscious mind, which you and I now both understand. I'm going to bring this all together. The third one being our mental. We all know or have heard, okay, if I just think positive thoughts, I'm going to get those things. But you're trying to think positive thoughts over your 95% of unconscious programming. That's really not going to get you to where you want to go. And then the fourth being our connection, right? Our spiritual relationship our two-way connection with this source, this creator, the energy, whatever your highest power is. So bringing it back, I totally agree. I was completely bought into everything we're sold when it comes to managing our emotions. You just need to regulate better. You need to be able to identify when you're being triggered and, all of this management. Like, oh, it's all about just thinking different thoughts. Like, no, man, it's about releasing it on the deepest freaking level. And the things that we've been sold about how to manage it is really just feeling a really big industry when we should just be taught how to release it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Because we're just talking about the mind and thoughts, and we're discounting our feelings. But how do we make our decisions in life based off how we feel, not how we think about it?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Yeah.
And the connection in our brain, right? You're deep into the science, so you'll probably be able to speak to this even more. But we have a thought. The thought triggers our brain to send a chemical into our body, which then triggers the emotions, right? Our emotions are an experience of energy that's sent into our nervous system by the thoughts that happen in our brain. Or there's an experience that then triggers the emotion that fires it back up to our brain that then makes us think the thought. So it's so intertwined that you really can't look at ourselves separately. You can't isolate them. Same for the physical body, same for the spiritual body, because the messages that we're supposed to be getting with the mental and emotional aspects of ourselves comes through our body. Mm-hmm. It's all together,
So talk with us a little bit more. I know you're still in the writing process, but if you have your outline, at least as of now, like how all of this is like playing into your book.
Oh my God, it's so good. I mean, so we're on the last rewrites. My deadline is June 30th. So like by Monday, I will have my book done. This is the third rewrite. I'm in final revision. So like it's pretty solid at this point. And to answer your question, how it all works in and together is I'm sharing everything about these 4 bodies that I've personally experienced in the last 7 years of my own growth, and everything that I've come to study in that time, which includes mental and emotional release, which includes MER. Like you heard me say, I was in therapy for 10 years before I got honest. I know what the traditional track is, and I've lived it. I share that in the book. And then I also share, like, here's the thing that actually no one's telling us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's awesome. So kind of the process of your breakthrough you sessions then?
Yes. And it's the process of our evolution across all 4 focuses. Mm-hmm. So a breakthrough session is fantastic. It can be where it starts with the mental and emotional aspects of things. But if we haven't built trust with our body to be able to understand our somatic language, the signals that our body gives us that lets us know if we're emotionally regulated or not, or if we're thinking the thoughts that are in alignment with the things, all of that comes with our body. So it's really the progression of our development. And I take us through first our physical relationship, our focus of taking care of ourselves, our container, then go to the emotional, because that's where the next things are trapped, right? Then I talk about our mental, then I talk about our spiritual.
Oh, look at that mental third. There you go. Not to like pick favorites, right? But out of those 4, do you have one that feels like really alive in you, or you have any favoritism towards one? And if so, why?
That's a great question.
Like for me, I would say when I was in the thick of it and fresh on my spiritual awakening, why was I so into aliens and all the other stuff? I was really deep in spirituality because I was like, I didn't know this was a choice, right? And it's different seasons. Like right now for me, it's physical. A big focus for me this year has been working out, getting in my body, eating healthy. And with that means like some amazing consistent times, but also some times that I'm really being challenged with like, hey, things are coming up if this is the area that you're looking for. So I'm just curious if there's like a season that you might be in now.
Yeah. That's a great question. And I was pausing because I was going through my mind of like, all right, what has my development been in each focus over the last few years. I'm currently heavily focused on my spirituality. I have, because life gave me the opportunity, become pretty solid with my physical body in the last few years, but that still has its own focus. So this year I've been cooking. I started a cooking show on Instagram on accident, as I came from being a person who literally ordered in dinner every single night, never cooked for myself, had a complete aversion to it. And now I'm cooking 5 nights a week. So like each one has its own little focus right now, but I'm currently heavily in my spiritual development.
I love it. I love it. And you mentioned that you had an aversion to cooking. You know, cooking is so therapeutic and such a creative expression. Like, since this is the work that you do and I do as well, in terms of like helping people to overcome these aversions, like what did that look like for you?
Yeah, it really looked like changing the decisions in which I was choosing to take the action with. So before, when I was resistant to cooking, it was because it was tied up in those negative emotions, those limiting beliefs. I was mad at my ex-boyfriend who told me I cooked the same thing every night and that he was ungrateful for me cooking meals, right? That lasted for like 6 years. I was like, F it, man. I'm going to find me a man who loves to cook. I'm never cooking again. This is going to be amazing. It didn't matter if he didn't cook, but as long as he fed me, it was fine. Then this year, after being through all of this growth, I've completed all of my breakthrough sessions. We do these in 6 areas of life. Each area of life, you set a new goal. I knew it was time to start taking care of myself in that way. I already was exercising. I was already managing my energy. I've had to do that because my life literally depended on it, but I still wasn't feeding myself very well. And it was just time to change my nourishment. The other big factor, Sam, was that I then now have time and space to do that in my schedule. Whereas 6 years ago, I did not have the capacity. So again, across all 4 bodies, sometimes things get a lot of attention. Sometimes things get prioritized lower on the list. And this year, the things that had been lower on the list, specifically like cooking, now gets to be at the top because everything else is checked off and everything else is harmonized. I have enough space in my mental and emotional ability to regulate my day. My job changed. My priorities are different. So like I can actually prioritize my health.
Yeah, it's so important. I mean, we have to put ourselves first. I love it. I love it. This has been awesome. Alexus, when does your book come out? Is it the fall of 2025?
Oh, yeah, Sam.
Yeah.
Okay, so I am dropping it on my birthday, September 12th, 2025. Here we go.
September 12th, 2025. Here we go. Well, guys, I know this one resonated with you. Go to the show notes. You can find all the ways to connect with Alexus there. Alexus, I'm actually going to see you in a few weeks for another training. And I was thinking, since you're a former college basketball player, we got to find like a 24-hour fitness or something and find a basketball court on our day off and shoot some hoops.
That sounds good. That sounds good. I can still drain a 3 from the corner, so watch out.
All right, Curry. We got Curry over here. Now, real talk, this has been a lot of fun. Thank you again, Alexus. Any final words on your end?
Your life is going to evolve as quickly as you'll let it. And so I hope you have a beautiful time on the journey.
Beautiful. Amazing. Alexus Rae, y'all. Thank you so much, Alexus. We'll see you again real soon.
Thanks so much for listening to the very end. I hope you enjoyed this episode just as much as I did. Alexus is a rock star. She's an amazing person. If you want to go deeper with her, be sure to go to the show notes to do just that. And if you want to go deeper with me, the best way to do so is by joining our free breath club. You can also inquire about me speaking at a future event or one-on-one coaching as well. So thanks so much for being here, and I'll see you on the next episode of the Soul Seeker Podcast. Thank
you so much for listening to the very end. I hope you dug this podcast just as much as I enjoyed it. If you got anything at all, please, if you could just do me a favor and leave a 5-star review wherever you listen to this podcast, it helps the show grow. So thank you for considering to leave a review. If you want to go deeper with Soltara or Elan, you can find the links to connect with them in the show notes. And if you want to work with me, the best way to work with me, the easiest way to work with me is the free way, and that's by joining the Breath Club. The link to the Breath Club is in the show notes. And also know that I'm available for one-on-one support, that is coaching and guidance, as well as keynotes and breathwork journeys for conferences and events. Thank you so much, and I will see you on the next episode of The Soul Seeker.